If you're stuck as a permanent mid-game player grinding bosses like Vorkath or Zulrah for GP and don't know the next logical steps to take to gain the skills you need to start smashing endgame content, this is the video for you. We'll be going over a few major pieces of content that will absolutely change the way you play OSRS, and they're all absolutely ridiculous for building up your game knowledge and competency. One of these is absolutely hated by the elitist weirdos in the high-level community due to how easy it makes getting into endgame content. I think all of this content sits firmly in the upper mid-game, but could be considered the first step into the endgame by some players. Either way, it's a big leap forward from the bosses in the previous section of this mini-series. If you're a complete noob or early mid-game player, you should definitely be checking out my other videos in the series after watching this one. They're going to have advice way more appropriate for where you're at. I also think you'll find the guides I've made on my channel useful if you're looking for some no-nonsense essential tips to get sending all of these bosses. The first bit of content we'll be talking about is entry mode Tombs of Amascut. Whilst TOA can be certainly considered an endgame raid, entry mode is doable in even the most modest setup. If you have 100 combat and a bank value of 10 mil, you've certainly got the cash and the stats you need to start sending this and learning those essential skills and mechanics. The reason the sweats hate TOA so much is because it makes making PVM accessible to anyone with its invocation system. If you're unfamiliar with it, basically you add modifiers that change the mechanics of the individual bosses and the raid as a whole, and as you do so, these bosses' stats increase with the raid level. This means you can tackle the bosses in their weakest form with as few mechanics as possible and add even tougher mechanics over time, slowly increasing the level. You can die in entry mode as many times as you like. I'm not sure on the rules for hardcore Iron Men because I'm not a sadistic weirdo that wants my life's work erased because my internet went down. So if you die in TOA and lose your red skull, don't blame me. If you do die in TOA, you'll get tasty honeyed locusts which act as a stackable food, prayer potion and super restore simultaneously. This basically means you can practice each boss as many times as you like with no loss of cash or supplies short of any repair costs, bolts, runes or charges used. I won't go into details on all of the mechanics, you can check out my full in-depth guide for that, but here's why these bosses are going to really help you up your game. Akkha is the ultimate boss for quick gear and prayer switching. Barbar relies on quick reaction times for his falling rock attacks and perfect pathing knowledge for the boulder phase. Crondis has some interesting movement and pathing mechanics, as well as timing the exploding jugs correctly. Kefri is great for keeping you on your toes for that constant movement and dodging mechanics. The final Wardens fight is a bit of everything rolled into one. It's got prayer flicking, dodging attacks, one-ticking the extra enemies. It's absolute chaos, and in my opinion, even if it's not the hardest fight, it's the most well-rounded fight in the entire game that requires so many different skills to master. Even though you might see Tombs of Amascut as some very intimidating content, definitely give it a go. Even if you only get to grips with one or two of the bosses, those incremental gains will get you on the way to wherever you're trying to get to. The only two downsides of the tombs is that the puzzle rooms absolutely suck and that you won't be making much money in entry mode unless you get really lucky. If money's your main concern, the next batch of bosses will be right up your street. Before we talk about them, if you've made it this far, like the video, drop me a subscribe and comment down below with the guides you'd like to see next. The next group is a bit steeper in their difficulty, the Forgotten Four from Desert Treasure 2. If you're a sensible young man or woman and you've got on your quest cape, you'll have killed these guys once already as part of the quest. The repeatable versions you fight after have all the same mechanics, but have some boosted stats to toughen them up a bit. Duke is the easiest to tackle and a really unique boss with his prep phase. This does get a little tedious after a while, but it's a really great way to learn about pathing and your true tile position whilst dodging the falling debris and the laser eyes. The main phase of the fight is a great example of a concept I like to call RuneScape as a rhythm game. Whilst to the untrained eye, it might look like you're dodging the attacks as they occur, but if you know the timing and where to click, you could do most of this fight with your eyes closed. It's just about knowing the Duke's attack speed and where you need to be at certain times. Whilst Duke is all about rhythm, Vardorvis is the ultimate test of pure reactionary gameplay. Quick prayer flicks for the projectile attack, frequent moving for the axes, and the spam click for his tendril attack are all making for hectic gameplay. But if you get used to the pressure fighting this boss, the pace of pretty much every other fight in the game is going to feel like a leisurely walk in the park. Leviathan lies somewhere in between. It's massively rhythm focused due to the prayer switching series of attacks, but it's got a fairly unique mechanic too, in that the rhythm speeds up as you go through the fight. Only you decide when to reset the rhythm. Shooting him in the back with a shadow spell or restarts his rhythm back to a slow series of attacks. This is great for beginners because if you're finding the speed overwhelming, you can just slow him down by shooting him in the back. And as you master the rhythm, you can drag out the phase for longer periods of time and get kills done quicker. Whisperer is the final boss of the 4. She's quite similar to Vardorvis in that you're constantly multitasking on the prayers and the movement, but it's not too hectic. I found her quite easy to pick up, but the enrage phase can still get a bit chaotic if you mess it up. All of these bosses are super tough, so don't be disheartened if you die. You'll definitely lose some gold, but all it takes is one big drop from these guys and you've made it all back instantly. I hope this video has given you the confidence you need to give one of these bosses or Tombs of Amascut a try. They're great bits of content and really great stepping stones into the endgame of OSRS. There's plenty of other aspirational content that you should look at if you've already tackled these 2 areas or fancy giving something else a go. The Gauntlet is great because it's got 2 difficulty versions and has no consequences for dying and has no gear requirements. TOB entry mode is another great first step into raiding. It's too easy to be a direct step to normal Theatre of Blood, but it certainly gives you a great feel for what raiding is all about. Any boss with reasonably intricate mechanics is always going to help you get better. Click speed and accuracy are the most important things other than understanding the mechanics, so simply getting time behind the mouse is always going to help. This is honestly the stage of the game that I'm at right now, so I know how it feels to be struggling through some of this content. With a bit of expectation management and perseverance, you'll be sending it in no time. If you've made it to the end, you definitely owe me a sub. I've also got a new Discord set up with a link in the description, so join me in there if you want to meet like-minded players looking to progress together and tackle some of the tougher group content or just for a chat. Thanks for sticking around, I'll see you next time.